Hello and welcome. I'm Victoria Bergvall, and I'm the Secretary of the local League of Women Voters of the Copper Country. This is a presentation by Faith Morrison, who is the co-president of the local League of Women Voters. And it's part of what we regard as one of the vital functions of the League, which is to inform the electorate of vital issues in front of us so that people become better informed about these issues. The jail has been on our docket for decades, and we think it's really critical that the population of Houghton County really be very well informed about why we need this jail proposal to consider as part of our millage coming up on the August 5th election. Faith, why don't you take it away?
Great. Thank you, Vicki. And I'm hoping that afterwards we can also chat a little bit, you and I, about our thoughts on this presentation. So thank you everybody for watching. I've called this presentation "Maintaining a Suitable and Sufficient Jail in Houghton County," and I've organized it in this outline that's showing on the screen now. And I'm going to talk about why this is coming to the county, what is coming up in the millage vote, and then what other options have been considered in the past, and how this what I call Sharon Avenue plan has been developed over the last several years. So the first question is, why do we even need a jail? Why is this up to the voters of Houghton County to pay for? And the answer is that according to Michigan law, that's one of the few things that is absolutely mandated by the state of Michigan, that each organized county shall, at its own cost and expense, provide at the county seat thereof a suitable courthouse and a suitable and sufficient county jail. So we are obligated to maintain a suitable and sufficient county jail. It's one of our fundamental roles as an organized county. Now, what goes on in the jail? Well, I think we all maybe think we know what goes on in the jail. The idea is it's part of our law enforcement effort, and it's meant to help the sheriff and the team maintain peace and order in the county. Sometimes, no, we maybe not think about who ends up in the county jail. And yes, people who are arrested for a crime end up in the county jail, and those who are awaiting trial, and those who are sentenced to a crime of less than a year. So only those who are sentenced to a crime of less than a year are actually sentenced criminals. Others are just people who've gotten crossways of the law up until we do convict them of something, if that happens. So there are people who come in and out of the jail from our local community, and it's not just some sort of an other that's not part of our community. It's really members of our community who get crosswise of things. This includes drunken driving, includes domestic abuse. It includes all kinds of things that you read about in the paper. In addition, it includes people who are experiencing a mental health crisis who then have some conduct that is troublesome. So if you present yourself at the local hospital and become too much for them to handle, the sheriff gets called, and then that's something that brings somebody to the county jail. So when we think about the jail, we shouldn't just think that this is a place for people who deserve to be there and are undeserving of suitable confinement that is fair and safe. These are our neighbors that are being confined to the jail as well. So that's something else to consider when we consider the use of the jail. Now, other times that I've spoken on this subject, folks have brought up different subjects, like why don't they let them out on bail if the jail is crowded, or use an ankle monitor or something. And my list at the bottom of the slide gives all the kind of things that a court can order that would reduce the population of a jail. Drug court, work release, a work camp, or early release. These are things that come up that the courts do use in Houghton County, and it's all entirely up to the court. And in fact, when we have a condition of an overcrowded jail situation, it's the obligation of the sheriff to go to the court and ask them to please release somebody from the jail. And sometimes the only choices are people who are duly convicted and are going to get a break on their sentence. So really, if we want those who are duly convicted by the court to serve out their sentences, we need to have space to keep them confined, which is where they've been sentenced. So those are some of the reasons we need to have a jail. But who decides? Who makes these decisions about how big the jail should be and what should be in the jail? And the answer is fundamentally we voters do, and that's what this millage vote is all about. It has to be paid for by the county, and it has to pass through a millage. And we have representatives who run our county government, the County Board of Commissioners, and they're the ones who have put together this Sharon Avenue plan that we're talking about today. But there are some backstops to that, meaning we can't just say we're not doing it. We don't think we need a new jail. No matter how bad it gets, we're okay with that. The state has laws as well in our state constitution that says that our jail must be sufficient and appropriate, and that the kind of confinement we provide there has to also meet standards, has to be humane. And if we don't follow those laws, and there are federal laws as well, then we can be sued, and then the actions get taken over by the court. So the public decides who will build a new jail and what it will be, but only up to the point where some other legal avenue isn't taken. And that is something that can happen and has happened around the country and even in Houghton County before. We have a lawsuit pending against us now, and it's not the first one. So we get to decide, and that's one reason to pay attention to the millage vote and decide while we have that chance. So I've gone through already my first 3 bullet points. Why do we need a jail? Who decides? And some of the factors that go into deciding how big the jail should be. And so on my summary is that we really do need this, and we have to pay attention to the requirements of the Michigan Department of Corrections in particular on what we need in our jail. So let's start and try to ask the question, what's the deal with this new Sharon Avenue plan? But let's start with what we have up there on Houghton Avenue in Houghton as our jail. So this is one of the floors of our jail where the cells are, and I'm circled in red the confinement cells for the jail. And there's a 1-person cell, there's 2 2-person cells, and there's 4 1-person cells, 6 2-person cells, and 2 6-person cells. And they're aligned on these linear hallways that you see here, which makes it very difficult for the staff to monitor those prisoners. They're the old-fashioned type. If you walk down these corridors, there's jail bars there, and things can come out of through the jail bars. And that's not the current standard that's not safe for the staff, and it's not the current standard for building and maintaining a jail. The second thing I've circled here is this green shape here. I guess it's in the shape of a T, which shows the workspace for intake and booking for the county staff and the sheriff's staff. And look how small it is. So you can just imagine bringing in a disruptive prisoner who's not particularly cooperating and working in these tiny spaces. So there's really just these narrow hallways in which the sheriff's staff can manage the inmates, the people being brought in, and that's very, very insufficient. Also, it's a jail. They have to feed the prisoners, and so there's a kitchen, which is very small, a laundry room, and then the staff area over here for the command staff, the sheriff's staff are in purple, and that's all the space we have. This room over here, this is the garage, also known as a sally port in jails. And this is completely undersized. So this is the way that a prisoner is meant to be brought in with a patrol vehicle. And in principle, they're meant to drive in here to the sally port, close the door, isolate themselves from the public, and safely transfer and privately transfer somebody who's in custody into the jail. The problem is with the size of vehicles these days, they don't even properly fit. You can't get the doors open properly in our sally port. And so actually the sheriff's staff have to work in the driveway outside. And everybody from the Copper Country knows that at least half the year, that's a very inconvenient and unsafe weather situation. But 12 months of the year, it's an unsafe situation with somebody who's not cooperating with law enforcement. In addition, our current sally port has, you can see over here barely, it has some stairs, and it's a very narrow staircase, which again, 2 officers and somebody who's being transported really can't safely make that move. So transporting and moving prisoners in our jail is our current jail is highly problematic. If we go to the Michigan Department of Corrections, or MDOC, they have 14 areas that they look at as necessary in a proper jail, and then they assess us regularly in our compliance. And then we also had, and I'll talk about them later, jail consultants come and review the inspections and the compliance with current MDOC laws. And this is our report card. So we have down here at the bottom a number of areas that are completely non-compliant, and even the majority of the other areas are only marginally or minimally compliant. So we have a lot of problems with our report card from the MDOC. There's only one area, the detoxification and holding cells, that are generally compliant with the requirements of the state. So again, if somebody is unhappy with how they're treated in the jail, they could find themselves a lawyer and argue that someone or another of these deficiencies contributed to how they were treated, and then we have to defend ourselves from a lawsuit. What will be in the new facility? And the new facility starts with, in fact, the handbook for the construction of a safe jail. And this by design will be compliant once it is placed. So all green, all the best compliant with state regulations. So let's get to the main story, which is the Sharon Avenue jail. So I'll talk at the end about the process for determining this, but I want to tell you about the plan because this is what's going to be on the millage. So these are some renderings of just to give us all a general idea of what the jail will likely look like. Now, truthfully, once the millage passed, they're going to set out for bids. There's going to be engineering that's done, and very detailed plans will be drawn by the engineers who are engaged. So these are not those plans. These are renderings of to give the public an idea of what the plan is. All right, so we have this lot that's been purchased by the county. It's on the south side of Sharon Avenue, where there's currently a church property that has a very large parking lot. And the plan is to put a new building to the south of the church itself that will comprise the entire new jail. So this is the mock-up of what the jail will look like. It has a two-story section, which is where the cells are, and a one-story section that has everything else. And now I can show you what that everything else looks like. So here from the top now, and now north has switched to being up in this schematic, is the same lot. The church is in the center, and then down here on the bottom is the footprint of the proposed Sharon Avenue jail. So it's on the south side and it's all new construction. You might ask, well, why didn't they just incorporate some of the building that's already there into the jail plan? And the problem with that is that it doesn't meet the fire rating. So imagine this, you have people confined into a jail, the doors are clearly locked. It's very hard for them to evacuate in a fire. Under those circumstances, everybody in the jail, the workers, the confined, everybody has to be able to get out in a safe time. So that's the most stringent fire rating there is. It's a life-saving rating, and that's not the requirement for building a conventional building as is the church building. So that's the reason why that could not be used for the jail structure. So let's take a close-up look at this floor plan. This is the cell region over here on the left. And then all the pieces that I talked about in our current jail are colored the same in this graphic. And you can see that there are all kinds of these areas over here that are what the staff use to do the good work of the sheriff's office in Houghton County. And now that amount of space takes up a lot more of the plan than it looked like it did in the other one. So that is a reflection of the fact that this floor plan and this square footage assigned to each purpose has followed what the Michigan Department of Corrections requires. The Sally port, you'll notice, is quite a bit larger, and it's not wedged in between jail walls and thereby not able to be made larger. Instead, it's a drive-through facility that allows the officers, the patrol officers, to bring in somebody who's come into custody, close the doors, open wide the control vehicle doors, and two officers without stairs can get the individual into the jail. So this is a properly sized jail, and this is part of the plan. Now, there are a few other elements that are not listed here. There is going to be a small courtroom to be used for arraignments, and that didn't make it into this rendering. But when the engineering work goes out, that is absolutely part of the plan that the county board is working from. Now, again, we don't have engineering drawings, but we do have some renderings of the kind of facility that we're looking at building with the millage that's before us. And I want to talk about a couple of things. This two-person cell is somewhat unremarkable other than it being safe and safe for both the incarcerated and for the staff. But there'll be a central control room that will allow the same number of staff as we're using now to monitor more than twice the number of prisoners. And the reason is because they're looking over cells. Look down here in the center. They're looking over cells that are on two levels, but in this kind of a wedge formation, like we saw over here, where the central control room is able to look all over the place to look at what's going on with those who are confined in the jail. And so this is what that looks like from that central control room in this kind of a jail. And then what happens is that those who are in these jail cells, they sleep in there, but during meal times and when folks are behaving and everything is calm in the jail, they can be allowed out into what's called the day room, and that allows them to sit at a table and talk to others in the jail if they want to, or not if they don't. And the idea behind this is to preserve mental health, really. So we don't want the jail to make the mental health of the inmates worse than it was when they came in. So we want to be able to have a facility that, again, according to the Michigan law, is humane. And these are the features that come up in the Michigan Department of Corrections guidelines. And so these are two different views of those kind of facilities. This one over here is the indoor-outdoor recreation area. In our current jail, we have an outdoor recreation area, which is a basketball court with chain link fence, and it's a bit of a thing to allow the prisoners out to use it. It's only done in the summer. In the winter, when there's snow, it's not possible to even use it. But they can sometimes walk up and down an outdoor corridor under supervision, or they can use that basketball court. But in all practical sense, it actually doesn't get used very much because you can't meet all of those requirements, that people are well enough behaved and that the weather is appropriate and there is somebody to watch them. So in a modern jail, there's a room like this. This is an indoor-outdoor recreation room where the population who are being allowed out for recreation can go in there. It's part of the floor print here, over here in J, and it allows fresh air when appropriate, when it's not too cold, to come in when they have these garage door type windows up high that are not reachable by those who are incarcerated, but they're up high and fresh air can come in, and that's the standard for that kind of recreational facility. So I've outlined briefly, I don't want this talk to go on too long. I could talk forever and have under other circumstances, but we're going a little bit more quickly this time. But I want you to know the overall look of what's being proposed. And now I'm going to tell you how much it's going to cost. So the county board has voted to put before the voters a 1.6 mil tax on property based on the taxable value of your property. And that for the median home in Houghton County is about $65 a year increase from what you're currently paying. Now, the median means that if you look at all the homes in Houghton County, from the one with the lowest taxable value to the highest taxable value, the spot in the middle where half of the people have a higher taxable value and half of the people have a lower taxable value, that's the median, and that's 40,382. So that's $65 a year, or $5.38 a month, and it is a 30-year bond to pay for the $32 million of this project. So if you want to know exactly for your house, if you grab that tax form that you get from your city or township clerk and look for the word taxable value, you can multiply that taxable value by 0.0016, and that'll tell you exactly what your tax rate will go up by if this is voted in by the taxpayers. It is a 70-bed facility, which is larger than our current 28, but actually our current 28 is not able to follow some rules of the Michigan Department of Corrections called classification, keeping everybody separate. And our 28 occupancy, if we were going to have a median daily population of 28, we would have to have more like 50 beds available for the shifting in the kind of people who are being confined in the jail. So 50 is the least we should increase the jail to. That would allow us to maintain our current facility while following all the laws of the Michigan Department of Corrections. But the county board has opted for 70 because they want the plan that we invest this enormous investment in to last for a long time, 30 to 50 years. And so it's a little bit safeguarding of the county's investment, that we don't build it so small that we're coming back to the taxpayers in a short time. So in summary, a modern jail that complies with all of the rules of the Michigan Department of Corrections is what's being proposed. The property has a building on it that can be used for other county operations at a future time. It's not very far from the courthouse, and it is going to cost 1.6 mils for 30 years. So, all right, that's great. That's the plan. What else was considered, or why do we think this is the right plan for Houghton County? And let's review then a few of the other things that the voters have already weighed in on and said, no, no, we don't want that plan. Or things that have been sincerely evaluated for their uh, value as a plan to go forward. So here are a few things that are in the record of what has been tried. Many years ago, it was said, well, why don't you just put a second story on the current jail and get a little bit more space like that? But as you can see from my discussion, what's wrong is not just that we need 10 more cells. The cells that we have don't allow the inmates into a day room, and that's now required. We have very small space for things like medical and booking and all kinds of things. And they just can't be made bigger by putting an extra level on the current jail. So it's just simply not a feasible solution to do that. Another option that had been put forward before the voters in 2011 was on the old Houghton High School lot, which is to the west of the courthouse, and said, we'll build something over there. That a lot of people thought that was a decent idea. The problem is that the voters turned that down. So having that spot, it was a rather large build in 2011, and it did not get the support of the community. In addition, now the county doesn't own enough property over there to build, and so it's no longer a viable plan. And if there were any further needs for growth, they would be stuck there in downtown Houghton, fitting more and more into a tiny, tiny space. Another idea came up in 2018. The county board at that time said, all right, we hear from the voters, they don't want to pay much. Let's put the smallest possible solution to the problem in an addition on the back of the courthouse. And that was also turned down. So that was a close vote. I'll show them on the next slide, or a few slides in. It was a close vote, but there were a lot of different reasons why people said no, that the League of Women Voters, which I'm a part of, found when we did various polls about why wasn't that a good solution in 2018. So that one also got voted down. So another common refrain is, why hasn't the county put a new jail up at Camp Kitwin in Painesdale? And I want to address that as well, just to make sure nobody's questions are unanswered. So the Camp Kitwin plan was seriously considered in both 2011 and 2018. In particular, after the 2018 election, where we turned down the smaller addition on the back of the courthouse, there was a cost assessment by UP and Engineers of Architects, and they said it is possible to convert that facility into a jail. But it was also the case that it would be very expensive to operate. And that's related to this central control room that I described in the plan for our current Sharon Avenue plan. Because they had dorm-style rooms and not cells, they would all had to been upgraded. And then you would have still had this linear cell type of arrangement that would have been taken a lot of personnel to constantly being monitoring. That Camp Kitwin facility is 8 miles from the county seat, which is problematic for going back and forth. It was closed in 2009 and not secured or maintained by the state of Michigan, who owns it. It has a mold infestation. And finally, one more thing, there's a access road that would have to, the cost for that would be an ongoing access road maintenance cost on the county. And now finally, that property has been sold and it is no longer available. So although I know there's a lot of negative thought about that among many longtime residents of the county, that was a missed opportunity. But truthfully, the Camp Kitwin would not have saved the county money. It would have cost us in the long run with all the back and forth and all the extra monitoring of the jail. And we would have had to either move the county seat to Painesdale or have the sheriff's office separate from the jail, which is not a very practical way to do things. So it was very seriously considered. It's not being brushed under the table as an obvious solution. It just had too many shortcomings to get the support of the board. So here's my summary of the millages. They've only gone up with time, and it has really been the take of the county board that we need to solve this problem as soon as possible before we lose the bet on probable lawsuits coming out against the conditions that are in the jail. And notice that many times the voters have weighed in, and so there's a lot of information out there what the voters like and don't like, and that'll come up in the next part of my talk. So in summary, past votes have given us a lot of data, and we need to take those into account in making a new plan. And now we're going to talk about the Sharon Avenue plan, which has the benefit of knowing what the voters thought of all the other things that have been tried. So how was the Sharon Avenue plan developed? It all goes back to that 2018 millage. Afterwards, the county board got together the 2019 jail task force, which was rather large. The League of Women Voters had folks on that task force, but everybody in the courthouse had representation on that task force, and a number of builders and people from the county who were engaged with this problem. As I said before, when I was talking about Camp Kitwin, UP engineers and architects did hard numbers on a number of things. They created subcommittees. They sent them out to talk to each other and to get the feel of the community. Why didn't you vote? They looked over the League of Women Voters survey results, and there was a lot of engagement and talking. Those meetings of that task force were done as full meetings of the county board. So there were minutes. The minutes are still online, and here are the links if you want to go back into that history. The takeaway from those task force meetings was that things like the Kitwin and all, things that were very far away, were not a great idea for the Houghton County Jail and Sheriff's Office. Let's build in Houghton City. Don't forget to address the problems in the courthouse with the crowding of the district court, and look for a location in the city of Houghton that will meet the needs of the county. That was what they said. And this task force looked closely at the Dodge Street option where the former high school had been, and that one also was not accepted by the voters. So it looked like to them that the thing that you needed to do is find a site in Houghton. So they went around looking for it. And they didn't just buy this church site, off the top. They looked at a bunch of different properties. I went back to the Board of Commissioners minutes, and I found mention of several properties that were considered, visited, evaluated for construction viabilities, etc. And they found ultimately this site on the crest of Sharon Avenue, very high, not going to be influenced by more extreme floods like the Father's Day flood of 2018. And it was available because that church was interested in building a new facility. So the initial price that they encountered was $1 million, but by the time they bought it and it was assessed, they purchased it for $1.2 million, a 6-acre property there on Sharon Avenue. The league has heard from members of the community all kinds of rumors about the church is getting too good of a deal. They're getting their bills paid. That's not true. The church has been using that facility since it was owned by the county. That is true. They pay all their own utilities. They have in their purchase agreement that they may use that facility until 2026 in August. They've been doing a great job maintaining the facility. They've kept the roof in good shape. They've shoveled that roof. And the only thing that the county took on was the insurance for the building, and that was added into the county's insurance plan. So if you have other questions about things like that, please bring them up at the public meetings that I'll mention at the end, and we'll get you answers to those questions. Second thing they did was they said, Sheriff, what do we need to build? And the sheriff said, I am not an expert on building jails. And he went around into the sheriff community and asked around and found the consultants we did hire, Bob Marsh Bice and Securitecture, who have done a number of projects, more than 20 UP projects on corrections facilities, including the 2018 Delta County Jail. So these folks at Bob Marsh Bice and Securitecture have 40 years of experience. They know that Michigan Department of Corrections requirement back and forth. They can project our needs based on our average daily population in the jail, on our county size, on our population growth. They used all of our own statistics to do their projections. They charged us $47,000 for their assessment as consultants, and they had a number of public meetings that I'm going to talk about next. So that was how we progressed. The sheriff formed a steering committee, and the members are listed here. And they met in person with the consultants on four occasions total over the course of the spring, last fall and this spring. In particular, we had the final after the final report, which was what they call the master plan, was developed. But all the input from that big jail steering committee was in it. And when that document was ready, it was posted on the county's website for everyone in the county to read. It's still there now, so take a look if you like. It's hundreds of pages long, but it is readable. It's a PowerPoint presentation. And they had a very well publicized county board meeting in the courtroom that was very well attended, where the public could ask their questions. And this was all before the millage was decided upon. Then the millage was decided upon and is now scheduled for August 5th, a few weeks from when I'm recording this video. And there are going to be 3 public meetings in advance of that, which will include the talk you're listening to and the presence of the sheriff and some county commissioners, so that you can get your questions answered. So how was the Sharon plan developed? It was planned with all of that knowledge of the last 25 years of discussion of jail projects. It has been planned with experts who have built dozens of UP jails and corrections facilities. It has been open to the public and transparent, with those documents being posted on the county's website. And the millage was passed. And now there are even more public meetings so that questions can be asked. And anything that's not fixed at this point is still open to the public's input. So for instance, if you have more input that needs to be heard by the county, even if you're in favor of the jail, you can continue to give that information, because as I said, step 1 after a successful millage vote will be engineering plans, and there'll be plenty of things that have to be decided still then. So I'm getting close to the end of my talk. I want to say just a few more things. You might ask, well, what happens if we just kick the can down the road one more time? And would that really happen, that somebody would sue us, or that the state would come in? And I can honestly say, nobody knows for sure of those things, but it has happened before. So in 1960 and 61, there were 2 failed millages, and the state did close, the courts did close our jail. And so the last time we built the jail in 1963, it was only under the duress of having outsiders tell us that we had to do it. And it cost more than if we had fixed it ourselves. Second, we have a local here, born and raised, he's a summer resident now, Sheriff Bob Perriam, who, as a law enforcement officer and as a sheriff in Florida, has experienced working in a facility that lost a lawsuit. So they lost a federal lawsuit, and the feds came in and said, okay, now you're going to do what we say. You're going to report to us twice a day. You're going to build what we tell you to build, and you're going to pay for it. And there will be no discussion. There will be no negotiation. So it's a pretty unpleasant thing. And Sheriff Perriam talks about that in a YouTube video that you can get to from the link that's just above that QR code on my slide. And so, yes, it can happen. And it's quite a risk to be taking, kicking that can one more time. So I'm at the last slide. In summary, we are obligated to have a sufficient and suitable jail. It's a part of our identity as being a county, and we need to do what is our responsibility. It is up to the public, unless we get really forced to later by a lawsuit or something. We don't want to go that route. The process to do this has not been short and rushed and jamming anything down anybody's throat. It's been long and deliberative, and a lot of people have been involved. And that seems like the best kind of way for groups to get together and find some compromises to get to a good solution. Expert advice was solicited. It was thoroughly vetted by the task force, and it's part of this plan. We bought a parcel of land For the jail, it was annexed to the city of Houghton, so it qualifies as being now as part of the city of Houghton. And if we hadn't done that, if the county board had not done that, we would be in a pickle. Because since that purchase, real estate prices have gone up and up and up and up. So we're really quite fortunate that they use ARPA money, American Rescue Plan money, to pay for finding the fundamental real estate. I know that our neighbors in Marquette County are having exactly that problem right now, where they cannot identify a plot of land to even begin talking about a jail. And we are not in that circumstance, luckily for us. So the millage takes place on August 5th. It's in all the usual places. And because we have no reason absentee balloting in the state of Michigan, you can use an absentee ballot that you can get from your city or township clerk. And that's the end of my presentation. So thank you, Vicki, for sticking it out with me here.
So I have just two questions. Faith, you may have to unshare in order to see me again for this.
I'll do that.
So just a couple of really quick points. Faith has given a number of presentations on this, which are available on the League of Women Voters site, as well as on the
County
Houghton.net.
Commission, Houghton County Commissioner's website.
So what's the address?
HoughtonCounty.net. HoughtonCounty.net. Capital letters don't count. They don't matter. HoughtonCounty.net.
And there are also a number of FAQs, people who've asked frequently asked questions, and there are answers that are given to that to address rumors and address other information that people have asked at these public gatherings before. So if you have a question that hasn't been answered, you might go look there, or you might also come to a public meeting or send a question into the League of Women Voters, and we'll find a way to get it answered and sent out to you. It's just critical that you become well informed about this. It is a process that's been going on for decades now. The 1963 jail, updated in 1980, really needs some attention. And so I think it's really critical that we look at all this work that a number of public officials, including Faith, who's been doing just incredible work to try to help inform local voters. Faith, anything more?
Nope, I think that's it. We'll let people take a pause from all this. Thank you for listening. Please tell others that this video exists. And please do vote on August 5th to get the county to weigh in on how the county should address its jail issue. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.